Hey, I'm back, and here I'm going to be talking about the Mini Z Buggy and the modifications I've been doing to it, as well as a new, well not new, but new to me anyway, the Carisma GT-24 in the Rally chassis, not the Buggy chassis. The Rally chassis, which is slightly narrower, has actually a fairly nice body that kind of looks, online, doesn't look nearly as good as it does in real life, but I'll get more into that a bit later. So let's start with the Buggy. I've been playing around with the Buggy as of late, and one of the big things I've noticed is I've been having a lot of binding issues. It's a lot better now, and while this front stays down, and so that's the maximum height, and then if I push it down it stays down, that's actually intentional. It's so the drive or the dog bones on either side stay completely flat, which just makes it a tiny little bit less resistance. I've also swapped back to the default Mini Z diffs. I'm just wondering if I've got one of the diffs spare. I did try the MB10 adjustable diffs, but found it felt like they were slipping under high load. So I just packed the old ones with some grease, and they've been relatively good. I've been pretty happy with that. So as you can see, no bounce whatsoever. It just goes down and sticks, which is great. I'm having a bit of issue with the back at the moment, so if I've got three wheels on the ground and I raise this one, I can rotate this freely and there's no push-pull. So I think I've got an issue with the actual diff in here. I've been playing a lot. I just replaced the drive shaft with a titanium one, not for any real reason, but I was going to be pulling it out anyway because by default this Mini Z has a bearing here for the drive shaft and a bearing there. But you can also put another bearing here, and I like to do that because the gears are just behind here, and having a bearing right behind the gears just makes the entire thing a bit more stable. It gives you a slightly better gear mesh, which is kind of good. The other thing is I replaced, can I get there? This part here is one of the hardened plastic drive bash covers, I should say. Now the VE Pro that I had actually does come with a bash cover. And let me just find it. Here's part of it that sits right there. The problem I found was that it cracked almost immediately. Yeah, I can't find the rest. That's fine. So I did have this one from one of my other builds, and I just copied it across, and it's actually a lot nicer, a lot sturdier, that's for sure. So the other thing I did is I upgraded to the what is it? The fiberglass reinforced frame. You won't, a bit hard to tell the difference here. Let's see if we can get some light on that. It looks identical when you put the screws into it. They grip a bit better, which is kind of nice. The reason I did that was, so this was the original frame that I had in from last week. The frame, as people don't realize, is actually pretty flexible, especially around this drive area. Now, normally you've got another part over the top here that strengthens it all up, but there's lots of little pieces that are quite weak, like these little parts here, which you'd normally put a screw in from the top to raise and lower the ride height. Flexes slightly, and you don't have that with the FRP. So I just wanted something a bit more durable and robust, so that's why I've swapped over to that. I also did the steel front and rear gears or drive couplers from PN Racing, along with the, as I mentioned earlier, the drive shaft in titanium. So that was a full replacement. And I suspect what's happened is the rear gears are not sitting in the correct position, that I want them to, and hence it's not making any contact with the rear diff. So if I rotate one wheel, the other one spins, but I can move these back and forward, and I can hear that it's not applying any power to the drive shaft, and the front wheels aren't rotating. So it indicates to me I might have to shim something or fiddle around with that a bit more. But apart from that, it's been pretty good. Filling up the diffs made a difference. Now I went for a light grease in the front diff and a tough grease in the rear diff, and I'm actually going to swap them around and see if that makes a difference after some experiments with the GT-24. I think what I've been taught about Diff tuning is completely wrong, but I won't know until I play it around with it a bit more. The only hassle is this is a bit of a pain to pull apart. One other thing I should note is the, might not be able to see it, but you see how there's a bit of silver metal in there? I've actually got the servo spacer, the metal servo saver in there. The issue with the servo saver is, so you can see it turning in there, it's quite a bit looser than the default one, a bit weaker. From memory I can tighten that with some screws and some shims, but I remember that being so difficult to install, like 2 or 3 hours, that I'm not even going to fiddle with it. Luckily once you've done that, it's a very, very straightforward operation to pull out the existing servo setup. As you can see, it's all fairly nice and compact there, and slide in a new one. So that's about all I've done with the buggy. Actually, I haven't done much more racing with it since then, or playing around with it. There's still a bit of flex in the steering setup, as you can see there. I do have some replacements for these cups here, the adjustable toe setup, and I'm hoping that that stiffens everything up. Part of the issue is that this gold plate actually flexes up and down, as you can probably see as I'm twisting like that. So if I put my finger on one side, the play's reduced but still there. So there's obviously some play in the actual gear setup as well as in the steering setup. So and it's actually quite significant. I hope that once I've got that fixed up, the vehicle won't sway to the side when I apply the brake, which is the biggest problem I've got at the moment. If I'm slightly to one side, it will veer off on that side. If I'm slightly to the other, it'll veer on that side. But if it's dead straight, and tracking dead straight, when it brakes, it does always pull off to the side. So that's that. It's also a bit lighter than most vehicles because I'm running lithium ion with spacers. So I've got a lithium ion AAA there and a spacer there. So even though I've added the metal parts, which do add quite a bit of weight, it's probably lighter than most default ones. I've got the metal bash plate on there, although I could go off and remove that if I wanted to. I'm very, very tempted to put the original Optima bumper bar, which is really, really wide and very good if you don't have a servo saver in there, but this does come with a servo saver by default. Yeah, I also found a hold of my parts, and the biggest thing I found with this metal plate is if I've got the shock screws fully tightened, the rear suspension binds. So I had to push it all, tighten it all the way up, and then back it off half a turn, and then I'd test it, and if it wasn't completely free, I'd back it off another quarter turn. And after that, it became super, super, super smooth. Although, as I said in the last video, I'm still tempted to replace these shocks with grease rather than oil, just to get the weighting of them right, because I know they're not identical. I've got the softest up the front and the harder ones up the back, and I'm actually tempted to swap that around, but we'll see what happens. I'm going to probably put this on hold for a week or two while I finish off some other projects. Now, the other thing that's been a lot of fun, let's put the top back on that before I forget. Also, this isn't the original case, this body. This is one I picked up at another time. I also had to adjust it slightly to get it fit on the frame. But oh, and if you've got the red setup, there's actually a screw on the bottom of this pole that allows you to rotate at 90 degrees, because otherwise you will not be able to fit a whatchamacallit, one of the clips through there to hold the entire body down. The indentation's in the wrong place. So let's put that aside. Briefly mention the MRZ. The only thing I'm going to mention is that the parts are on the way. Hopefully in a week or two's time I will be able to finish building this, and it's mainly the servo I'm concerned about now. So now onto the GT-24. Now the astute of you will have noticed that that didn't bounce as much as most of the other GT-24s that you see, and that's for a couple of reasons. One, I've grease-filled the shocks. But what most people don't realise is for the rally version, the shocks that do come with it, these ones here, there are indications that they can be filled with oil. I wouldn't try it, but adding some grease to this has definitely made a difference. I've also put grease in the diffs with thick grease at the front and less grease at the back, and that's made it quite controllable. What else have I done? I found that the pins pop out really easily. I've replaced the wheel nuts. And, oh, that's right, I've changed the battery out. So you get this piddly little Naimai. I'm not a big fan of Naimais. I don't even have a Naimai charger around. And it's one of the dumb chargers you have to manually pull once it's charged up, otherwise you risk everything catching on fire. And I've taken my mini Z pack and the connectors and put that in there, and taken one of the 300mm pack. So I've got a larger capacity battery in there with high voltage, and that just slides in super well. In fact, it's a better fit than the default batteries that come with it. But mainly left this stock and been extremely happy with the performance of this vehicle. So there's a couple of interesting things to note with this. If I pull out the Mini Z Buggy, the wheels are about the same width. In fact, I'd say the Mini Z Buggy wheels are slightly wider. The wheels in terms of diameter, if I can get off the black, actually if I go like that, they're identical. So they're identical to the front wheels of the Buggy. The rear ones, well, this has the same front and rear, but the Buggy wheels are really massive. So if you do need to replace them, Mini Z Buggy wheels are a good choice. And I'm very tempted to swap them out to see what that's like, although this has too much grip as is. I get a lot of traction roll with this, and the body does roll quite a bit with the suspension setup I've got. I did have to move the shocks in just to get a bit more ride height out of it. I found the front was sinking too much, and I wasn't getting the maximum, whatchamacallit, they were going down and then staying down way too far. So if I do that, I'm realizing I'm not seeing the same issues I was before, so maybe I've fixed that up better than I thought. I was originally going to put some spacers on there to make it sit even higher, but it looks like I don't need to. The body is just the vacuum formed plastic, although it's thicker than most. And just having a look at the inside, there's quite a bit of, you can see how good the mold is originally. I was actually kind of blown away with just how good the body is. There's a lot of stickers on here, but it kind of works. And this frame tends to roll a lot as well. So the reason why the wheel size is important compared to the Mini Z Buggy is, the original reason I got the Mini Z Buggy was to drive outdoors. And it's mixed for that. Sand and dirt gets caught in all different places and binds it up. Actually, I'll take this back off. That's not an issue on this one. So the body is solid plastic. There's no holes in it, or no massive holes in it. The only real issue I have is had sand get caught in the steering, and that does cause some binding, but that's quite easy to clean out. I run this through sand and it survived. It's not the best in sand, but it definitely makes it through it. So this is going to be my little basher, and given that it's a rally car, it's really good for that. I put some extra weight on the front, just like on the Tamiya XV01, and this really does turn on the spot. It's also worth shouting out to them about the controller you get. So normally I'm not a big fan of the controllers that come with vehicles, but this one's been pretty good. You've got your midpoints, you've got your adjustable steering throw, or your endpoints. You've got your throttle and steering reverse, which you'll never have to touch. And then you've actually got an exponential here. And the exponential has been really handy. Although now with all the tuning, I can drive it in any of the exponentials, whereas previously I had to have it at the lowest setting, just because this thing really hauls, and full power is just causing this thing to spin out almost immediately. The only real downside I've seen with this is the traction roll, but you just brake harder. I haven't quite worked out or looked into reducing the traction roll, but I do like the skill of having to back off a bit, and not just being able to power through it. So it doesn't really work to try and get the backhand out of this. It's just got too much grip. On polished cement, that works fine. You can actually get the back out on polished cement, but on anything textured, you will just have this entire vehicle flip. Luckily, if it's on its side like this, if you turn the steering either way and yeah, if you turn away from the side you're on, and then accelerate, the vehicle will twist and normally land back on its feet, and normally in the same direction you're pointed in, which is really, really good. The curve of the top of this vehicle also tends to lend itself to either landing on its side or flipping over completely. Very, very few times where it was actually stuck on the roof like that. So this has actually been a lot of fun. I wasn't expecting to have nearly as much fun with this, and I'm very, very tempted to see what the Carisma buggies are like, because the out-of-the-box performance was incredible. This thing tracked incredibly straight. It's not just that I'm not looking to do any mods for it. There's not a lot of mods available, and honestly there's not a lot you really, really need to do with it. If you're having a racing league of this scale, you could probably buy about 3 or 4 of these and have a lot of fun without doing a lot of work. So I really kind of like this a lot. So this is definitely my outdoors vehicle. The buggy won't be, but maybe on the polished concrete down in the garage or something like that. But the real difference between them is basically the length of those arms. You can see on here they're significantly shorter. So if I can point it out better, like it's only the width of my finger, whereas here it's like 2 fingers. So that does make a bit of a difference. Probably more so if you're jumping the vehicle. I suspect the Carisma buggy would be an incredible vehicle. From what I've seen online, it's about on par with this, but I don't really feel that there's anything in this scale for the rally car. But if you look at it purely from a price to smile ratio, this is definitely hitting above its weight class. It's very much like the WL toys. Like, that's a very, very fun vehicle, not a lot of money, but you get a lot for it, and I really feel this is the same. I'm heavily considering picking up a second one of these, mainly because I've actually I pulled this apart and got some dirt in the diffs, but I'm already banging up this body and I love it quite a bit, so I'd like to have another one just sitting on the shelf ready to go when I break it. So definitely recommend this if you're looking for an outdoor rally. Indoor rally, I'm probably not the best one to ask. There's enough videos online, but it does seem that the Mini Z Buggy, especially with a couple of mods, does beat out the Carisma Buggy on carpet tracks at least. But if you're going outdoors, I'd definitely be going where there's sand and dirt. I'd definitely be going with the Carisma Buggy, no doubt about that. So hope you like that. I do want to do some video of this driving around. I've got a new camera to do that sort of capture, so perhaps this weekend we might see some of that. And yeah, hopefully you'll be able to join me for that, and we'll see if I do another video tomorrow. So I'm screwing up how I finished this video, but who cares? Have a good time and keep on building. I will see you all later.